Welcome back, everybody, to Caught in the Spokes. This week we have my special guest is Abigail. I'm just going to be interviewing her today. She is a fully licensed LPC, licensed counselor, and today we're going to be talking about the world of mental health through her lens as a therapist. So I guess we can start by, how did we meet?
Yes. So we met, I want to say March of 2023, so almost 2 years. We met on Bumble Friend, right? So Bumble BFF, which for those of you guys that don't know what that is an app that you go on just simply to make friends, right? So we all know that there's the Bumble dating app, but this is basically speed dating, but for friendship. So 2023 was a big year in my life. As you know a little bit about my story and my background, what was going on with me that year, but I had a lot of shifts and changes in my personal life and professional life in 2023, and I already had a really good solid group of core friends from work, from school, just from different experiences, but I really felt this urge to diversify my friendships, and I wanted to meet other people. I especially, and you know this, wanted to meet other counselors. People don't realize that our profession can be a little isolating, and so I felt like I wanted to just meet more people that do what I do. So I swiped right on every counselor. And I was especially excited for you because it seemed like we had a lot in common. So we met that way and met up in person, and it's been a friendship ever since. Yeah.
I can officially say that, you don't have to get scammed on Bumble if you do the BFF route. And I feel like just so thankful that we did meet on there, you know. I definitely feel like it was meant to be. So
I agree.
I'm so glad that that we did meet. I think we were both at a tough place in our life, and we really needed each other. And so I'm glad that we did.
Yes.
So okay. So today I'm going to ask you a couple of questions.
Perfect.
What sparked your interest in mental health and led you to become a counselor?
I like that we're starting off with $1 million one, right? Because that, there's so many pieces to that one. But I kind of compare the way I made the decision to be a counselor to a crock pot. And I think of me making crock pot decisions throughout most of my life, meaning that in a crock pot, you put a bunch of different ingredients in over time, and then it needs to simmer, and it takes a while. Nobody just expects their crock pot to be like a microwave meal. You don't have it immediately. It takes time to formulate it. The idea of studying it and being a counselor actually never occurred to me. So I was a reader, so I studied English instead, English and communication, which I'm glad that I did because I love to read, I love to write. And of course, that's a part of what you do as a counselor. You have to do a lot of reading and writing in grad school and a lot of communicating, right? But when I graduated, so when I moved here in 2018 is when I moved to Dallas, I thought that I was going to go to grad school to be an English teacher. So I actually interviewed at Texas Women's up in Denton, and I did the whole interview process to go to their English program. I thought I was going to work there or another university and teach, people about literature. But I ended up going to church, and at church, it was Gateway at the time, they had they were advertising their counseling program for their university, which is the King's University out in South Lake. And so it was one of the first times that I'd ever been exposed to somebody, a community that I was immersed in, talking about being a counselor, not just studying psychology, but actually being a therapist. And so one night, I looked on the program online. I looked at all the classes you could take as a counseling student. And that's when the simmer happened in the crock pot and all these different ingredients, just it became something. And that's when we almost had more of a microwave moment where immediately that night, I never looked back. I decided I was changing my mind and I was going to be a counselor. And I thought about it. I researched it after that, but I would point to that evening as looking at those courses and realizing no, I want to do this. This is what I was wanting to do in high school. This is what I wanted to do in college. Let's actually do the thing I want to do.
I love that. Yeah. I'm so glad that you did, because you're great at it. What specific types of mental health challenges do you most commonly work with?
Yeah. So in private practice, and you know this because you do that too, you are sent a lot of different clients with a lot of different needs. I like to streamline the people that I see into a couple different categories. So I do a lot of relationship counseling. So I'm a couples therapist. And so I do like marriage counseling. Yes, I know.
Kudos to
That's a lot, but it never, like, one thing about it is you're never going to be bored, right?
You're
So
not.
there's going to be something every time they sit down. So I love like premarital. So within that, that's like a big bucket, right? Relationship counseling. I like premarital, and I like couples who are on the brink, as they say. So couples that are reeling from infidelity or considering divorce. Something that I want to really hone in on is discernment counseling, which is helping couples decide if they want to stay in the relationship or leave, which is a very specific type of counseling for couples who are just coming in with a lot of uncertainty. So I like that as a challenge. And then the other thing I like to do, the other like category of people that I love working with is trauma, which is also a huge category. And I like kind of narrow that down to I love working with women. I think both men and women experience trauma, but the way that women internalize trauma and experience it is different and unique. And so societally speaking, and so I love working with women who've been through trauma and come out the other side and are trying to figure out what being whole and being back in their bodies and back in their autonomy feels like.
I prefer the kids.
See, that's a special. So as much as you're like, oh, how do you do the couples? I look at you and say that's a special heart to do the teenagers and the kids.
Yeah, I love the teens. I didn't think I would, but I do love working with the teenagers.
Yes.
Okay, can you explain your approach to therapy and what makes it unique or effective?
Well, the tenets of the Abby theory are no, I don't have a theory. I was actually told by a supervisor one time that like you could actually just make your own theory and market it, and create a book about it. But really, it would just be an amalgamation of everyone else's different theories, and that's pretty true. Like in graduate school, you study all these different theories, and Freud has something to say, and Carl Rogers has something to say, and so as like cliche as it sounds, I feel like it's just a toolbox of a lot of different pieces that I've seen work and know either from research or from seeing it work with people work.
Yeah.
But I love, so trauma informed is what I would say like my theory is, meaning that I think everyone's been through something, whether you want to call that a big T trauma or a little T trauma, everyone's been through something that at some point felt too big for them to cope and change the direction of what they've been through. So like your podcast is Caught in the Spokes. I feel like everybody's had that moment. So that becomes very defining for people. And usually they can trace it back to that, right? Be it the small or the big moments. Yeah. Everyone has found, I don't know what to do with this thing. And so a trauma-informed approach is essentially looking at where did you find yourself getting stuck? And how do we get you unstuck in the sense of you figuring out not just what the antidote to that thing would be, but who you are, right? What it did to your mindset, what it did to your worldview. And so trauma informed is like looking at where did you get stuck? What does it look like to come out of that and be free? Yeah. If that makes sense.
You're so smart.
Well, thank you. I don't feel that way, but thank you.
and I think it's good that you are trauma informed, right? Not just in your career, but in your personal life too, because you have been through a lot. And so
very well spoken.
Yeah. I think when you go through a lot, you naturally feel a pull towards wanting to just help those too that have also been through something traumatic. So trauma does vary,
It does. Yes.
What are some common misconceptions about mental health that you'd like to address?
That's a good one. Those are also like so varied and so individualized. I guess thinking about it from the perspective of a therapist and then also thinking about it from the perspective of a client. Because one of the other ingredients in the crock pot that made me become a counselor is that I got my own therapy. And that changed my life. And I would go so far as to say, like, at the time when I started getting therapy, it really did save my life. Yeah. And so from the perspective of a client, I think a common misconception is that therapy is a quick fix or that it's a fix at all, that we're coming into therapy to fix something. I think of therapy now, like as I continue to be a client, I'm a therapist, but I've always been a client of therapy and probably always will be of my own therapist. God bless them a lot. I probably send them to their own therapist being their client. But like I used to think this is a fix. I'm broken. I'm damaged. Something about me, whether it's my depression or anxiety or self-harming or eating disorder, is the bad thing. Therapy is the antidote. It's the thing that'll fix me. And I realize as a client, I continue to do that therapy is a relationship. So it's a relationship with somebody. But then ultimately, if it's done well, it leads you into a relationship with yourself. And same as like if you were to approach somebody as I'm going to fix you, you'd probably not be in relationship with them because it's not about that. It's about vulnerability and intimacy. If you can have that with yourself, then you're going to get somewhere. If you can learn to be vulnerable, compassionate, intimately in relationship with yourself, you start to realize I'm not something to be fixed. I'm somebody to be experienced. But that's a common misconception I feel, is as a client, you think it's a fix. Which I think that can happen as a therapist too. But if we're looking on the other side of the equation, I think from a therapist point of view, what I see a lot of is people thinking not only is it a fix, but it'll happen overnight. And I mean, I tell people, like it took you however old you are, so 20, 30, 50, 60. I've even worked with people who are like closer to 70. It took you this many years to develop this way of seeing the world and interact with the world. I'm not saying it's going to take another 70 to change that, but we have to be willing to at least put some focused time into the same thing that took a lot of time to damage you or whatever the problem is, right? It takes time to get there. It's going to take time to get somewhere else.
Being receptive to that.
It's not quick. Yeah.
Self-reflection.
Yes.
It's a process.
100%. Yeah.
What are some of the biggest challenges you see individuals facing in today's world regarding mental health?
Oh, that's a good one too. Challenges that I see. I would say therapy being not super accessible to everyone in a way that it ideally would be. And that could be, for financial reasons. And when the economy goes up and down, we see a lot of that. Because the crux of that is that therapists, that's their career, as much as it is a calling and a passion for hopefully most of us. It also is how we make our living. And so we still need to be paid, but we also see that like there can be a discrepancy between who can then afford that, right? So there are wonderful therapists out there that stand in the gap and offer pro bono or sliding scales, but that's a sacrifice on both ends. So financially, it's not always accessible. Insurance is not always the easiest thing to, if you just say the word insurance to a therapist, you're immediately going to see even the folks that take it. It's just not easy. And it's only been getting more complicated too. So I think that whether you take insurance or not, you have to run up as a therapist against the challenges either way. And then as a client, I've had so many clients say, my insurance doesn't cover it, it partially covers it, the risk to privacy and HIPAA with insurance. So, I mean, if we're just looking practically, those are two big things. But I think too, and I'm definitely not against the way that social media uses therapy, but I almost wonder if part of what we're looking at with TikTok and social media therapists is it's almost becoming like too accessible in the sense that people are not going to therapy because they feel like they're getting what they need from a TikTok provider, they're getting what they need from like a social media warrior, which those people they serve their function and they're usually so well intentioned, and there are gems of information out there. I follow therapists on Instagram that I love, but it's not a substitute. I do meet people that think that it is, so I think we have to be careful about, at one point therapy was not accessible at all and shamed and frowned upon, and at some point it's almost as if therapy is so widely accessible that people are sometimes confused what it is.
Yeah, when you have a client that comes in with their TikTok video and
they've already self-diagnosed, I almost wonder, like, why do you need me? I think you know already what you're doing, and you know the antidote. Sometimes they already have figured it themselves out, so you have to do a little bit of deconstructing.
That's so true.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you brought up the TikTok thing though, because there is a lot of good out there, but there is confusion.
Wherever there's a lot of information, there's going to be a lot of misinformation. and good stuff too. But unfortunately, there's just so much out there. It's not all good.
Yeah. What are some common mistakes people make when trying to address their mental health?
I think that's a really good question in the line of what we've talked about, because I could probably point back to the social media part right away.
Yeah.
Be careful who you go to and where you go to for answers or fixes, right? Like, I think that realizing that, same as if you had a physical ailment and you looked it up on WebMD, right? Some of that's going to be accurate, some of it isn't. So I'm seeing like a trend of, oh, I'm struggling with, intrusive thoughts or depression, and a lot of like self-diagnosing, right? It's helpful to go to people who spent years and years and years learning to differentiate and diagnose. So that's helpful. So I think that's one of the challenges, is be careful like how you diagnose yourself.
Dr. Google.
Yep. And so, but part of that too is like, again, this concept of I'm a problem, I need to be fixed. I think it's really important how you talk to yourself about yourself. Same as if you couldn't function in a relationship with a friend or a partner if you kept shaming them, if every time they tried to open up to you, you put them down, right? If you do that to yourself, you no longer become a safe space for yourself to bring up issues, to tackle the hard stuff. Building trust with yourself starts with how you talk and communicate to yourself about your own challenges. So listening to your self-talk is important. So I don't know if that answers your question. I hope that it does.
I think you answered great.
Yeah.
Perfectly. So true. It goes back to self-love. A lot of people, I think, struggle with that. So, and that goes back to trauma,
Yep.
If you haven't.
And the shame.
Lots of shame. And
lots of shame with trauma.
Then it's hard to see or feel that self-love,
Yeah.
What are some effective strategies for managing stress and promoting mental health in a fast-paced world?
Like that. I always wish that I could pull out my little bottle of like stress antidote, and that we could just take it every morning, like a shot of like green juice, and we'd have no more stress. But no, I think that like anything else we've talked about, it's a process. I think that first of all, and it may sound like a little rudimentary, but being aware that you're stressed is the first issue, because I feel like we live in an environment and a world where we are all constantly stressed, but we're so used to such a high level of it that we don't even realize this is actually not good for my body. I don't like living this way. We just are used to living this way, right? So how many of us like struggle to go to bed because our minds are racing? That's actually should not be something that we all put up with. The fact that we have like high blood pressure in this society to the extent that we do. It's not something that we should all be as used to as we are. So I think the first step is even dialing things so far back, realizing what is actually normal. And so like one of my favorite tips for people is to just do a little research into the human body and like what's like a normal blood pressure, how many breaths per minute is healthy, right? Is to get back to some of the basics of like just establishing a baseline, because so many of us live in so much stress that we're like unused to what we actually would like to feel, right? So I teach my clients a lot of mindfulness, which is just wherever you are, practice being there. So practice breathing in and saying, I'm in this place. Practice breathing out and saying, I'm in this space. Practice realizing what the thoughts are in your mind and just simply saying, I'm noticing I'm having a thought. Practice noticing what's happening in your body. I'm noticing this sensation in my body. That brings you back into yourself, and it brings you back into, okay, this is exactly what's happening right now. But if we are not able to practice that, we have no idea. If we're running on stress, if we're running on like yesterday's fumes, right? Most of us are running on like empty tanks.
Years ago's fumes.
Empty tanks, and like it's just fumes at this point. So just the recognition is huge, and I think mindfulness is my favorite tip for people that want to recognize that. Once you have that, then I mean there's all kinds of ways to manage stress, from breathing to progressive muscle relaxation to diet and exercise. But I think people want to jump to those things without even understanding and being in their own bodies enough to say, this is what feels good to me, or this is what doesn't feel good to me.
Yeah, being able to like observe how you're feeling. Like being the observer of your thoughts. But for anyone wondering, 120/80 is the perfect blood pressure.
Yes.
But I think that's a great way to look at it. I didn't even think about, kind of looking into the body. That goes all the way back to also like herbs and
Yes.
just more non-traditional forms
Yes.
of help.
Yes.
So.
Yeah.
Okay, what are some of the most rewarding aspects of your work as a counselor?
I love that. I say because I have so many that come to my mind. I'm like, where do I even start? But I think fundamentally it's watching people like themselves again, or maybe for the first time. Because to be honest with you, when I started the journey of becoming a therapist, I wanted to make people's pain go away. I wanted the bad stuff to go away. I wanted to be the person that made everything better for them. I think what I really wanted in doing that was to be that person, but for me, because I wanted that growing up. I wanted somebody to show up and almost like ride it on a horse and like make it go away. And so I wanted to be the person that I didn't have. And so in my mind, I had all these like grand aspirations for what I was going to accomplish for people. Within like the first month of my internship, I realized like that is such a beautiful and noble. So me trying to have good self-talk right now, me trying not to shame myself, that's a beautiful and noble thing to want, but that is so far from what therapy is. Therapy is helping people to rescue themselves, right? Therapy is helping to get somebody on their horse and arm them up so they can ride into their life and say, I'm the only one equipped to save you. I'm the only one equipped to rescue you, but I've got you. So helping people go back and heal their inner children, helping people to go and say, I'm here for you. I'm going to rescue you. Yeah. So in that way, my job, I see it now much differently as I help empower you to save yourself. So now when I see clients, my first question to them when I sit down with them is, how do you want to help yourself? And then how do you want me to help you? Because it's not my job, it's not my responsibility, it's a sacred gift, but it's not my role anymore as I see it. So that's the most rewarding thing, is helping them figure out how to save themselves. And some people, it takes months, some people it takes years, some people leave Emily before I never get the chance to help them do that, but I just have to believe like that was what they needed then. So that's the most rewarding thing, is seeing people reclaim their autonomy in their own lives.
Yeah, never underestimate the power of planting the seed.
Yes.
So
we are seed planters.
We don't always get to see the outcome. But we are a start for them.
Yes.
Helping people recognize the light within them.
Yes.
So I love that. Well, what are your hopes for the future of mental health awareness and treatment?
Yeah. I would love to see more community and nonprofit centers continue to be funded. I would love to see the folks that work there be more celebrated. I mean, I was thinking last night, actually, like because I was watching celebrity interviews and I was thinking, I like everybody else. I celebrate, the people that are on, the interviews and on the funny videos, but I would love to see the people that do the work in the nonprofits and do the work like in private practice, do the inpatient work. Those are heroes, and those are people that I would love to see more spotlighted. And I would love to see, I worked at a lot of nonprofits when I was in graduate school, and I would love to see those more funded, more celebrated. But for mental health in general, I think I would just love to see more information, be it like on social media or TikTok or through really good blogs or people telling, more accurate, truth-telling, vulnerable information, and people stepping out and sharing their stories, and hopefully people learning from that as well. Yeah.
I love that, and I love you. You're such not just a great human, but a great therapist too.
I love you too. Thank you for that.
So honored to have you as a friend and to have you on here. And
thank you, my friend.
And for sharing, your perspectives with our viewers.
It means a lot to hear. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, that's a wrap.